So like the other really big issue that we have with politics and elections in this country is that the discourse is kind of muddy and murky and kind of poisoned in a couple of ways, where we aren't like talking about the actual issues. We aren't talking about policy. We aren't talking about the running of the country and who we want running the country and for what reasons, like why we think they'll be best. We're talking about childish things in some ways. We're talking about how people are dressed. We're talking about weird photos that were taken of them. We're making fun of them, which is, you need to be able to mock your officials. If you can't do that, it's a sign that you're in a dictatorship. But we're doing that to the extent where we're not talking about it in a useful way. Because at the end of the day, there's only actually one good way to make a decision about who to vote for, right? And that's like policy and leadership, right? What are the people you are considering voting for telling you they will do, or you can see that they will do based on their record when they're in power, right? The policy is the thing that actually matters. And so we have all of this discourse where it's like, well, such and such wasn't wearing a tie, or this person looked funny eating a bacon sandwich, and it's like, who gives a shit? Everyone has a dumb picture of them somewhere eating something dumb, right? Like, that doesn't make a person a bad politician or a bad leader or a bad anything, right? You need to be making your decisions based entirely on whether or not you think the things that they are telling you they will do will serve the country. And you can like check. A lot of the time you can check, right? So if your local official or any of the members of a current government or anyone who's been an MP for a long time, like have been sitting, you can check their history in terms of votes that they've attended and how they voted, right? So on a local level, if you're looking at like someone who's been in that seat for many, many years and someone who's not, you can't check both records because one person hasn't been an elected official yet, so hasn't been doing that. You can look at their sort of history of the work they do in the community and stuff, but the person who's already sitting and standing for re-election, you can go and find their record. It's public information. Just go online, find it. You can see everything they've ever voted for and how they voted there. You can also see every time they didn't turn up to vote. And that's really important because you want to know on a local level that the person that you're electing is in fact going to go to Parliament and fight for the things you care about. Because this is the point of a representative democracy. You pick someone collectively as an area who will go to the national conversations that is Parliament and have a say for you. And if the person that you're electing isn't going to say the things you want said on that national level, if they aren't fighting for the issues that you care about, then you're doing it wrong. Go find someone who will represent the things that you want represented. And if no one is, write to the people who are in office and say, listen, this is the most important thing to me. I want you to bring this up. I want you to fight my corner on this, because that's their job, right? On a national level, you're looking at party policy. What does the party say that it's going to do? What has the party done? And you should be examining all of your options. You should be looking at what the current Conservative government are doing relative to this video. If you're watching this video in 12 years' time and we don't have a Conservative government, delete as appropriate. You should be looking at what the opposition, in this case Labour, are offering, but you should also be, what do the Greens say they'll do? What does the SNP say they'll do if you live in Scotland and there are SNP candidates where you live, right? Like, everywhere you are, look at all the options available to you and consider their policies. And consider what it is that you think will make for good leadership and good running of this country, right? Because from where I'm standing, the actual thing that is important is, will these policies make the quality of life better for the people who live in the country? That's the bottom line. That's the job of your elected officials, is to make sure that the quality of life of the people, that's everyone in the country, is as high as it can be. So for me, I look at, let's take some examples, right? For me, I look at the Conservative government that we've had for 11-ish years now, and look at like policies that they have instituted in that time. And things like the bedroom tax, which isn't technically a tax, but nonetheless is a way to make cuts that hurt people who are already hurting and decreases the quality of life for people who are already on quite a low rung of it. And that bothers me, and I don't think that's appropriate way to manage that. So, like, I disagree with that policy decision, right? You examine it and you take that. I look at the decision to bring sort of private investors into the NHS system, thereby sort of privatising parts of it little by little. And like that strikes me as nonsense. Forcing new contracts onto junior doctors, forcing a contract onto a person, right, onto a group of people, that to me is nonsense and is a really bad way to run your health service. So I disagree with these like things that they have literally been doing as policy decisions. So I don't want to vote for the Conservatives because I don't like their policies. Compare that, for instance, to the policies that Labour are talking about in their campaign right now. At Easter, they put a bunch of stuff out right before the election was announced, talking about what it is they want for the running of the country and how they'd run the country. And they're talking about a £10 minimum wage, which is brilliant because that is so much closer to what an actual living wage is in this country than the living wage that we have now. That is the kind of policy I can get behind because that's what I want from this country. Talking about renationalising the rail service, which is great because the reason trains are expensive is partly to do with it being a privatised system where there isn't a lot of competition between operators, so prices can get really high. When it's a national system, prices of train travel should likely come down, right? So I'm in favour of that particular policy. The nationalisation of the parts of the NHS that have begun to have this privatisation creep in, that's obviously a thing based on my previous point I'm well in favour of. The list goes on. But I'm like, oh, I like those policies, those push me towards being inclined to like Labour. And I'll do the same examination on all the parties who are relevant where I'm living and who have candidates standing, and I'll make my decision that way. Now, you, stranger watching this video, might have different opinions to me about what constitutes good policy or bad policy. Talking about that is what the political process is supposed to be about. You might think that bringing private enterprise into the NHS to support it is a benefit and a good thing and the correct way to do it. We'll disagree, but we can have a conversation about that. But even if you disagree with me, if you're voting for a Conservative because you like their policies, then you're doing it right. Then you're doing it right, because you've examined the policies and said, no, this is what I want for the running of my country. This thing and this thing and this thing that these people are offering. And I want people running my country who have voting records who line up with my philosophies. So I think that this thing is the way we should be running the country and that this is the kind of law we should have and this person has constantly voted for that, great, make that decision. We don't have to agree on what is good policy for us to both be doing it right by voting for what we think is good policy. At the end of the day, that's how you should be making your decision. It doesn't matter any of this other nonsense, right? Whether you think a person dresses smart enough, whether you think they're good at being taken, having pictures of them taken next to primary school children. Doesn't matter. What matters is policy. That's how you should be making your decision.